Welcome back to another episode of the Kevin Moore Show. Now, on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Terri-Ann Russell. Now, Terry takes us on a journey from the death of her treasured son, Anthony Joseph, who passed away on July 2019, in her book, From Death to Life. Now, Terry tells the story of her journey as a medium, from overcoming the grief of her son's loss to communicating with him on the other side, and the healing she's gained from that connection, and much more. Terri-Ann Russell, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Terry, I've gone over, obviously, bits of your book as well. And I found it to be, a really heart-wrenching, and an amazing, story of what you've been through. I think what grabbed me, actually, when I was first looking at getting you on, was the title of the book as well, which is From Death to Life, the incredible true story of Anthony Joseph. Now, Anthony Joseph, obviously, was your son, and he passed over on July 16th, 2019, which is only last year. And I just found it incredible that you'd already, written this book, and had become published, and you're sharing this book with the world right now. Was this book definitely part of your sort of I'll say the word recovery process in a way? Was it your way to sort of deal with what you were going through and to share it with others?
Yes, that was part of it. Early on, he was adamant about pushing me towards that writing, and I would be laying in bed just so grief-stricken and crying, and he would say, "Get up and write that book." And, part of the process for me, it did become very healing as I went through it and I began to write it and channel him. That was an adjustment, getting used to channeling your child.
I can only imagine. Now, there's obviously so much to this story as well. So, obviously, would you class yourself a medium?
I am a medium, yes. I'm also a healer, medium, channel.
Okay. Now, that sort of work only became your full-time work, I believe, when I think I've got this right. When your daughter was born, she was born with lots of complications, and you turned to energy healing work to help her through some of that process. So just tell us about that story.
Yes, she was born in 2009. And years ago, I was introduced to Reiki when my children were young, and I just didn't have the time to invest in something like that. And I was always drawn to energy healing, working with my hands. But when she was born, traditional medicine failed us. So I was really guided then again to go back into finding out more, all I could, about alternative healing. And through energy healing, she's actually been hospital free for just about 4 years with no blood transfusions. And she was getting blood transfusions every month for 3 years.
Wow. Okay. And she's about 10 now, is she?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And we're just speaking off air there. You've got 3 sons, and I believe you've got a stepdaughter as well. So a bit busy for you, right? And I'm guessing that when this just happened, it must have just tore your world apart in a sense. Do you know what I mean?
It did. I wasn't prepared for it at all. His death was unexpected. We had just been away on vacation for a week in Vegas, and he was healthy, and there were no signs of him being ill. And then a few days before he transitioned, and I use the word transitioned because even though he shed his physical body and he's not here, he still lives on. So I use the word transitioned a lot. But we saw him a few days before he transitioned, and the only thing he said was that he was a little tired. He was working a lot.
Before you got into, obviously, the energy work and becoming a medium full time, that gift must have always been there, or was it? I mean, how do you just develop that all of a sudden? Do you know what I mean? We've all got that ability, haven't we? But was there any signs that it was there before?
Oh, absolutely. We all do have that ability, and that's one of the messages in his book, is that we all have ability to connect and use our intuition. I was intuitive as a child. I would see spirit. I would get premonitions, and I would have vivid dreams of things happening. And as a child, I thought I was making these bad things happen. So I sort of shut it off. I turned it totally off, blocked it out. And then when my daughter was sick and I began meditating again, it started to open back up. I would see spirit in my house. I would feel spirit. I would hear spirit. And that's how my development began again, to open up and connect with that. But being a medium throughout this process has really expanded through the years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So when you were becoming transitioning to do your mediumistic work full time, who was helping you, guide you on that journey? Where were you going to? Who were you meeting, and what was that process?
It was incredible. I had a spiritual awakening in 2017. I had a near-death experience. And so I had died and went to the other side. I had a premonition that that was going to happen. And I had told my husband about it. And within a couple of weeks, it did happen. Only during the actual near-death experience, I traveled further away than I did in my premonition. So that really solidified me again in that direction of going into this full time and helping others. And I began my journey. Once I began Reiki and learning alternative methods for healing, everything just sort of flowed easily. It opened up. I received guidance after guidance, guiding me to the people, the places where I needed to be.
Okay, so a near-death experience. What happened there? What caused that?
I was very sick with an upper respiratory infection, and I was on Benadryl, and I'm very sensitive to medications. I don't take normal medications, but I was on Benadryl, and our daughter had also been sick around that time, and she had a baby dose of albuterol. And I don't know if you know about albuterol, but it's very intense on the heart, and I have a heart murmur. So about 2 weeks before I had the near-death experience, I had a premonition that I saw myself go into cardiac arrest. I was laying on the bed. Everybody was around me crying. I was floating and hovering above the scene, and I had told my husband, and he sort of just laughed it off and shrugged it off as, oh, I'm sure you'll be fine, So what happened was the Benadryl wasn't working. I was deathly sick. He gave me a baby dose of our daughter's albuterol, and I ended up going into cardiac arrest. I was, again, hovering over the scene as, my children were there, my husband was there, they were crying. But with the near-death experience, I floated further away. So I could still see and feel and have a connection to them, but I was much further than I was in the premonition.
And what does that space feel like?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's expansive, and there was just this immense love that filled me. And I don't feel like I was there long, but I heard go back, and immediately I was back into my body and in the ambulance going to the hospital. So I don't remember them working on me much. I don't remember, from the time that I started sucking in the albuterol to the time I was in the ambulance, I don't have much recollection of that time other than watching it from above.
Wow. Okay. So that was part of your journey to, opening up some of your gifts, do you think?
Absolutely. After that, I began to shift to having this guidance to move to Sedona, Arizona. And if you don't know about Sedona, it's very spiritual. Sedona was very spiritual. I was guided to move there full time. And right after, so that was like April. In July, I had gotten a part-time job on the weekends so that I could work up in Sedona. And we lived down in Gilbert, which is about 2 hours. So we could travel up here on the weekends, and I could work part-time until we could transition and sell our house full-time and come up here full-time.
And where did you move from again?
Gilbert, Arizona, which is about 2 hours south.
Oh, right. So still within Arizona, but to Sedona. Yeah, I've been to Sedona, and that's where you are right now, still now, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And, the energy is so intense and so healing at the same time. It's it definitely brings out a few things in you. Sedona does. I know that. But yeah, so that's where you ended up, and for how many years then until until the passing of your son, were you there for? Have you
We were
been there
here
for?
almost 2 years, so about a year.
So, your son was at college, I believe, in Flagstaff.
He had gone to college in Flagstaff, NAU, and he stayed in Flagstaff. He had such a feeling of community and love. He felt very at home in the mountains. So after college, he stayed there. He worked as a DJ. He has his degree in journalism and communications. And so he found love in the restaurant business, and he was just very at home in those mountains. He felt peace. And so that was about an hour north of us. So we would go up and visit him a lot. We spent a lot of time with him there.
Right, okay. So if we move it to July 16th, 2019, there were no real issues that he was having before this, was there, health-wise?
No, like I said, we saw him a few days before. He had said he was tired, but he was working a lot, so I didn't think anything of it. I didn't get a feeling. I look back at it now, and I still get sort of some anger that comes up about it, how I was not allowed to see it. So like when my children were young, I would have a reoccurring dream of an officer coming to the door and telling me something, and I would fall to the ground and I could see myself crying. And that's the scene that played out the night that Anthony died.
Now, Anthony had some kind of strange dreams as well, didn't he, sort of leading up to the time of his passing?
He had a lot of premonitions. He was very psychic. When he was a child, he told me he chose me to be his mother in this lifetime. And at that time, I was not spiritually open. I was like, you're crazy. But he was very open and he was very empathic. So when he met with people and he would, instantly they would be attracted to his energy. They would start unloading all their baggage on him, telling them their life story, and he would just get so drained from it. And so I had to teach him how to shield and sort of protect his energy from that type of person.
Absolutely. So let's move to the day of his passing then. So how did you get the call, or who came to your door?
An officer came to our house at 2:00 in the morning. They were from our town. Flagstaff police had sent a local officer to our house and told us the news. And again, I fell to the floor. I was sick. I felt like my heart was ripped out of my chest. But immediately I could hear this high-pitched sound in my ear, and I couldn't distinguish what it was, but I knew it was him. I could smell him. I could feel him. It was such a weird experience, even as a medium. Now, this is my child. I'm getting this devastating news and he's yelling at me, but it was like it was garbled and there was like a glass wall separating us, and he would yell, "I'm okay, Mom, I'm okay." And I shut down. I left my body. A lot of times when there's trauma induced, especially me, I travel a lot of many dimensions. I leave my body a lot. It's natural for me to leave my body. So I left my body during that trauma. And I immediately was under attack. The whole time he was trying to communicate me, and my psyche was not having it.
Well, no, I mean, most times from some of the interviews that I've done, when someone comes through, like a loved one, it's at a time when you've gone through your own sort of, healing process in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But how quickly did he come through?
So he died, transitioned about 10:00 p.m. At 2:00 a.m., I was getting the officer at the house, and he was already communicating with me, so 4 hours.
When you had people come to you, and I'm sure you had a lot of people prior to Anthony's passing that had lost loved ones, that you never really understood their pain, but now you can really, sympathize with them. You can really understand the process that they're going through.
Yes, as a healer and a medium, I'm very empathic also. So a lot of the message I get are feeling messages. Spirit usually shows me how they died. That's one of the evidential parts of my mediumship. So I feel that in my body, and I usually feel it very intensely. But I would say now I have a better understanding, because I'm not only experiencing their grief, but I'm experiencing my own grief as well as I go through that process of reading for somebody else.
Of course, of course, of course. Now, what were some of the discussions? When did the discussions start to open up? When when you were really ready to speak to Anthony? How quickly was that? I mean, I know you talk about it was a quick process that he was communicating, but when were you really ready to start having that two-way conversation?
Well, for me, so right away I was under dark attacks and I was having adverse effects to having such a low frequency. In my business, we talk about keeping our frequency to a certain level because of the work that we do. We only want to bring in the light. We don't want to connect with the lower level realms of the spirit world. So for me to keep my frequency up, it was work that I needed to do every day. Now, grief is such a lower vibrating energy. I talk about in the book David Hawkins and his map of consciousness, and grief, how low grief is on that scale. And so when grief is that low, the dark is able to come in. Alternate personalities come through. I was taunted. I was laughed. They would tell me, you could be with your son tomorrow. Just take your life, kill yourself. And I knew for me, that was not me speaking. I missed my son immensely, but I knew that was not the way to be with him. And there was no guarantee that I would be with him. So that process of being under real dark attacks was probably about almost 2 months by the time I was able to raise my frequency, do some healing, get some help from my Sedona Soul Sisters. And he then, around the month mark, he came in with a dream, and he visits me every month anniversary with a different dream. And those dreams broaden in horizon as now we're on almost 11 months.
Right, right. What would be the one bit of advice you would give anybody that's lost someone right now, that's listening to this, and that is going through that dark night of the soul process?
Healing, it's very important for us. I say it in the book. We need to feel it to, heal it. We need to feel it. Right. I don't believe in squelching down our feelings. This ripped my heart open. I was so low in that energy, but I also knew that I had to heal and I had to feel that. So like, for example, I would have triggers of the doorbell ringing, and it would immediately bring me back to that moment when the officer knocked on the door, and it would bring me to my knees, and this all-encompassing fear and pain would rise within me. And I had to learn how to walk consciously into that trigger, look at what that was coming from, and sort of desensitize myself over and over and over again. And through that, I was able to start being able to feel what it was and then begin to heal it through energy healing.
Okay, okay. How close did you get to thinking about taking your own life? Did you ever get to that point?
Yes. I think right away I was saying, I can't do this without you. I can't stay here without you. I was so grief-stricken, and I was ready to go. There was no doubt about it in my mind that I was going to join him. And he kept saying to me, yelling, he would come in. And that's a lot of times when I would hear him outside of my body. A lot of times I hear him in my head telepathically. I do, when it's a necessity, he will come outside of my body and he will yell, and I will hear his voice and feel his energy. And he said, under no circumstances are you to follow me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Yeah. I mean, everyone goes through the process differently. I mean, and I know people do consider this, and I think it's important to, that you share your story, that, there is a way through. And I suppose time's been a great healer as well.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about the time part of it, but, connecting with him, having that connection with him, doing the work, the energy healing to heal that grief within me, learning about all I can about where he is and what is he doing now and how he's helped. And then learning more about our soul contracts. I talk about in the book too, our soul contracts as well. Having an understanding of how I took my life in another life and how I set up this contract very specifically so that I would stay. So I have a young child. I made it very specific in my soul contract that had I had a young child, I cannot leave.
Okay, so when did you start going in? I mean, you've gone into quite a few sessions with Anthony, and what were some of the things that you explored then? You mentioned their soul contracts, And
Hmm.
I'm sure there's so much you explored that was obviously we can't talk about it all because there's so much to that's in the book as well. But just name a few that just sort of come to you.
The first thing he was very adamant about me knowing was the soul contract. This was a contract. I kept saying it was malpractice, or if he called me, if I went to the hospital, I had so much guilt, I could have saved him. I would have made sure. And he kept telling me it was my time to go. There was, he would say, time was cut short by your standards, not mine. And he arrived just in time when he was supposed to. So having an understanding of that and looking at that and how I made that contract in another, lifetime gave me clear perspective of the work that I am doing here and the work that we're doing together. So that the soul contracts are very important to everybody's life before we become who we are. Before I became Terri-Ann, I was in spirit and I set up this contract for this specific reason to come here and to do my job and fulfill my mission at this time.
Absolutely. And what is I mean, did you go over some of the deeper meanings of why we come here and stuff with Anthony?
Yes, so Anthony has been, we have talked about, I didn't know much about twin flames before I began this work with Anthony. And through this process, I've learned that we are one soul, our soul. So we are a twin flame union. I still don't know much about twin flames. I'm doing some research now. But we are all one. And whether you're a twin flame or not, we all come from this oneness, this source. And we all have this connection with one another. That's like when you think about somebody and all of a sudden they call you on the phone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That happens a lot to me.
Right. Almost like a deja vu kind of moment, but you're sort of tuning in, aren't you? And what is his reality like for him right now?
It's beautiful. He's very happy and he's very fulfilled. When he first arrived, he told me he was working with children that had transitioned. So I'd say at about maybe 2 months, he had guided me to go back into the office, and I was in no way ready to go back to work. And I was in the office alone, and a woman came in and she wanted a mediumship session. And I said, I'm sorry, my son just passed. It's very overwhelming for me to feel his energy when it comes in. I'm trying to still process my grief, and I don't think that I am the person for you. And she said, can I tell you why I'm here? And I said, okay. And she said, I'm here because I lost my son about 4 weeks ago, and he was young. And I said, okay. And I heard, Anthony, you need to speak with her. So I did. And through the process of Anthony being on the other side, he's brought me many people that have lost children now. A lot of my clientele are people that have lost children.
Wow. Okay. And does Anthony come in on the readings that you give to people?
Yes, absolutely. Most times he's either had their loved one guide them to me. She said to me, I don't know how I got here. I was outside of your office. I was not planning on doing this. I came here to heal after the loss of my child. And she's like, I just was drawn to your office and I walked in and I saw your face and I knew I needed to speak with you. So that is spirit working together where they are, my son, her son, connecting us for me to help her through her grief.
What's some of the common things that come through and some of the issues that people have on losing a loved one so quickly like that, and especially a son or a daughter?
Mm-hmm. The disbelief. Having had a sick child, I can tell you my experience with her. I never felt that God, source, would take her from me. I felt she was a gift. I had her at 40 years old, and she was a blessing. I never felt that she would be taken from me. And so then having a son now who is very healthy, and he just transitioned with similar conditions to what she was born with. I don't think we're ever prepared to lose our loved one, our child. I don't think we're ever prepared for that, no matter if they're sick or not sick. So a lot of common things that come up is the disbelief, the fear, the anger, the guilt. There's a lot, as moms, we carry a lot of guilt in general, but over our children, we carry a lot of guilt. We couldn't save them. We weren't able to be there. We somehow created this illness in them, so that's a common thread with a lot of mothers.
What's some of his most important messages that he's brought to you, through you?
He wants everybody to know that there is healing available, that your loved ones never leave you. He wrote a lot in his journal, and I have his journal, and he talks about having a voice to help others heal. He was writing a book before he passed, and I don't think he ever had the confidence to go forward with that. He was such a giver and such a helper. There were so many people that came forward and shared messages of his being a man and how he would just give you the shirt off of his back. So he really wanted to help people heal. And so in the afterlife, his message is clear, is that we all are capable of communicating with spirit. We are all capable of healing ourselves, and that we are all connected in one way, and to look at the broader picture. Life is more than what we can just see.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. So that, we can live that life that we want. We life is so short that sometimes, we care so much what others think, don't we? And, we don't always live in purpose of what would really, satisfy our soul. Do you know what I mean? And,
Mm-hmm.
we all came here. We didn't come here just to, care what others think so much. And I suppose, I talk about love a lot on this show, right? But, love being an answer. What would love do now in any situation, right? I guess, does he, what I'm trying to get out of you as well is, what are some of his teachings that he's bringing through you or has brought through?
Yeah, love is one of the most important, to love and live from your heart space, because our ego is so strong and we're taught from a young age, why would you think of yourself like that? You're not better than anybody else, and stuff like that. But when you live from that space of love, you see the world through different eyes. Being a healer and a medium, when I connect with a person and their energy, I go right for the heart space, and I look at their heart and the person that they are, the person they are on the inside, not the person they portray on the outside. The person they are, I feel that energy in them. And so Anthony's message is also about love and loving yourself. The most important, love yourself first. He wanted me, through this process of healing, to love myself regardless of what it looked like on the outside, how I was falling apart. Love yourself, Mom. You can heal through this. It's possible. There's a reason for all of this.
What has been the healing process for the other kids? Obviously, they're at a young age, and obviously this was, devastating for all of them in their own ways. And watching Mum communicate with their brother, how has that helped them?
So I have older sons. Anthony was my middle. I have a 30-year-old and a 26-year-old still. So those two, my oldest son works and he avoids any type of feeling. My youngest son is angry, and so he has a lot of anger around, and he has a lot of pain. He began drinking really a lot after Anthony passed, more so than I had seen before. And I was worried, and Anthony kept telling me, it's just his process that he has to go through. So I always, put an olive branch out. I'm here if you want to talk about it, but I never pushed them to have my beliefs or pushed my healing on them. And then I have my daughter, who is 10, very, very psychically connected to Anthony. So she is also very empathic and very psychic. So he visits her in her dreams. We talk about, and she sees, we have an altar in our house with his ashes and a couple of the things that he had in his house. So we have this tribute to him here, and we go to him, and she'll buy him like a candy bar and put it on his altar, and she'll say, I love you and I miss you. And so through the grief process for her, it was hard for her to watch me go through this. But she's also very independent. So she would all of a sudden become needy. I need you, mommy. I need you to help me with this. So she forced me to get out of bed. She forced me to take care of her when I wasn't ready. So that was her part of processing the grief. But we talk about him a lot. He's very present in our home. I tell her, that he's here to protect you. She doesn't have any fear of him coming or that he's here.
If you had a message for her future self, if she was watching this back in the future, what would that be?
I can tell you she's an amazing child. She's not of this world at all. I don't know if you believe in multidimensional beings. And so she is a starseed. She came here with a strict purpose. And being she was so sick when she came in, I would tell her definitely to go after what she wants with a vengeance. I mean, she is tiny and fierce, and she doesn't let anybody get in her way. But I would tell her to live from her heart for sure.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you. So when you're bringing Anthony through, you mentioned in the book about channeling. How did that develop? Is that the main way you bring him through now? Or is that just one of the modalities?
So when I want to speak with him, he taught me a specific practice to use to bring him in where we meet in his world. But he's there at all times. He'll come in, he'll pop in. Sometimes he says he just sits there if I need him. I can feel his energy if I'm driving in the car or at the store. But when I channel him, I go into a light hypnotic trance and I am in his world with him. It's hard to describe and put into words. As a channeler, I extend my energy out and I merge with his energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is that something you were doing before his passing?
I channeled interdimensional beings before, but not, your child is so different.
Oh, yeah. Well, God, yeah. And is that something that's very private to you, or do you do that in sessions, or?
We have a circle that it's called our virtual circle. And well, right now it's virtual because of COVID. But we were doing it in person. My Sedona Soul Sister, Ivory, and I have a group, and we channel Nyandala, which is in a consciousness. And so we've been doing work with them, and we want to share it with the world because their world merges with our world, if it makes sense. Past, present, and future is happening all at once. So they're able to come in and meet with us. And they had a lot of messages that I've channeled about COVID and what was going on. And, there's more going on than we actually know. And that's probably a whole nother story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for now it is, but that's interesting. Yeah, because I've been doing a docu-series on channeling. I've interviewed just over 70 people so far in person, and we're looking to get it up to 100. So I would like to, definitely think about getting you on for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's called They Call Us Channelers. And I've interviewed a lot. That would be fascinating to get you on for that. So, and I guess that side of your work is very different to the medium side, or is it kind of similar in some ways, tapping into the same space?
It's a little bit different because with a mediumship session, there's usually a person sitting there with me, coming in, seeking me out to find their loved one in spirit. With channeling, I'm an open channel, so I'm very open to that energy. Being in Sedona, about the energy. There's a lot of extraterrestrial energy, multidimensional energy. I can see portals. I can open portals and all this crazy stuff. But so it's a little bit different for me. I go into like a light hypnotic trance, but I still understand what's coming through. And I'm also, again, very careful about the energies that I connect with and who I channel.
Well, I was going to ask you that. Yeah, how do you use that word discernment?
Yes, it's very important to me. I know what lowered frequency energy feels like, and it's nasty. And, had I told you before Anthony passed, I would have told you that there was no way that lower dimensional energy could connect with me. I just was not in that space. I'm a high frequency being. And then after Anthony passed, being in that low frequency of grief and how easily they were able to get into me and start to take me over. I mean, it was very quick. I would have nightmares and they would come in and attack me cyclically in my nightmares. And, I'd wake up kicking and screaming in these sweats. And so I'm very careful about who I call in, who I'm connecting with.
Yeah. And I guess you just never would have dreamed, would you, that you'd, be publishing a book. It's, so soon as well. No. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up.
And I'm not a writer, I don't
Right.
write. And my son, like I said, he was in communications and journalism. He uses these big words when he comes in, and I'm channeling him like subjugated or arduous. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can't even spell subjugated or arduous.
Right. So most of the book was channeled then?
Yes.
Yeah. With the way that you've expressed the channeling, or creative writing, or a bit of both?
Yeah, it was a little of both. The parts that aren't in italics is the parts that I really wrote through from me, as best as I could describe the feeling of grief and how it was affecting me. The parts that are channeled from him or go through also channel journaling, which some people call it. I can connect with him and channel him, but I don't always write down what he's saying, if that makes sense. He talks about downloading these light codes into me, and being in Sedona also, I've had a lot of light codes downloaded into my DNA.
Obviously, I think what your book, the message of your book is as well, and we maybe touched on this before, is that, we all have the ability to tune in and hear and communicate with those that have crossed over, our loved ones, for example. We don't have to go to anyone to do that. We can do it ourselves. That's the main message I got from this book.
Yes. Because people are looking for something. When you lose somebody, a piece of you, I say a piece of me died that day, and I will never regain that piece of me again. I will become a new and a better person, but that piece of me I lost when my son transitioned, people are searching for that. I need to know they're okay. I need, especially when a child dies or a young man dies, nobody would have ever thought, how did this happen to a perfectly healthy 27-year-old man? And so you are able to connect with your loved ones. We all have that ability. Sometimes people will say to me, I was sitting there after my father died and I felt like somebody was watching me. And, it was very peaceful and I didn't understand it. Or I felt chills on the back of my neck, like somebody was watching me. And I always tell my clients, that is your loved one. They're there with you. They're giving you signs to show you. So we all have that ability, but grief does hamper that ability when you're so in the throes of grief.
What path of the process are you on right now? I mean, it's going to be always, every day you wake up, it's with you. You go to bed, it's with you. But I mean, how easier is it now, in a sense? Is it getting better?
I still have my days that I'm in disbelief. I go through, I don't really have any anger. In the beginning, I had a lot of anger and guilt. I go through a lot of disbelief right now. Like, I can't fathom how any of this occurred. And, my parents are still alive. My parents are 71 and, they struggle with, why am I still here and my grandson is not? What did I do wrong that my grandson is not here? So I had to do a lot of energy healing on them as well to help them clear some of that grief so they could start feeling his energy come in, So the process, I don't believe it's a linear, straight line. I think it comes in spurts and it goes. There's days that I, have great days. My energy is really good. And I don't know how I'm going to go through because we have his birthday coming up and his angelversary. I'm not sure how that's going to affect me yet. So that's coming up in a few weeks and another month. So I'm going to try to stay very focused on my work and stay focused with that connection with him to help me to get through that.
Yes, of course. Absolutely. And how have your parents taken the work that you're doing right now? And obviously they know about the book, do they? And if they do, have they read it?
Yes, they have. Um, it's funny because when I began Reiki, they really didn't understand what it was. We were raised Catholic, but Catholics believe in laying of the hands, which is similar to Reiki. So they understood that. And I've done Reiki on them before. So they understand what energy is moving. When Anthony transitioned, they went through the period of, being angry at God. My parents are very Catholic and very, God-fearing. God bless them. But my mother says, she'll call and she'll say, what did Anthony say today? And my dad will call and he'll say, have you heard anything from Anthony? Or what does he think about COVID? Or what does he think about, Eric got a promotion? And what does he think about this and that?
Would you be surprised that even though you've got this wonderful communication with Anthony and you're bringing through this information that you're able to do all the work that you do, that it's so much more than what you are even able to comprehend it is? It's actually beyond our conceptualization of what it really is. And you think it's one way. You think the voice that Anthony brings through you is, he's just telling you the surface level stuff. It's actually so much more.
Oh, absolutely. I haven't even touched the surface.
Right. You're just in that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Once we go into spirit, we finally find out the truth. And I always say, like my Sedona Soul Sisters and I discuss it. I'm going to remember it. I'm not coming back again, and I'm not making a contract like this.
Yeah, we all say that, don't we? And
so we laugh about it because, in spirit, things are so different for us, and we see the world. We come here to learn and grow and evolve, and that's Anthony's message as well. And I believe there's so much more that we don't know, that we can't see, that we cannot even comprehend while being in the physical body.
Does Anthony want to come back?
I have a feeling he's not going to come back. But he did tell me, I'm hearing him now, that's why I'm listening. He's saying that next time he'll be the mom.
Right.
No, I'll forget it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I always say that they'd have to get me kicking and screaming sometimes to want to come back. But I think it's so addictive to want to be here in some respects. Do you know what I mean?
But is it really changing now too? We're going into the fifth dimensional reality, and things are really shifting and changing. So it's my hope and my belief that I hold on to is that as we shift and change as a humanity, we're not going to have to come learn these really hard lessons, these lower third dimensional lessons anymore. I think it's going to be different when we come back. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. I mean, what you're saying is that you'll be a bit more evolved as a soul, and maybe some of these basic lessons, what we'll call them lessons, I mean, it's a harsh way of calling them, but some of these basic things that we've done many lifetimes, and maybe it's time for something different. Maybe you'll come back even more aware of who you were. I mean, look at some of the kids. Yeah.
I was going to say, some of the children coming in now, my daughter's one of them, extra sensitive to light, sound, smells. She doesn't like to eat meat. And she's just one of many children that are coming in that, many of my clients come in and they bring their children in who are extra sensitive. And I tell them they're just not of this world. They are highly evolved.
Yeah, I would love to have a conversation if we can get you on the channeling docuseries, which we'll talk about after this interview, right? I'd love to, speak to Anthony through you. And, just that there's so many questions that I've got for him. And, so, yeah.
I have a lot too. He always tells me I'm not his only job.
Well, let's ask him. I mean, is this the only book you're going to do with him?
No. Absolutely not.
Right. Yeah.
There's more coming. In the book, I don't know how far you read, but he brought in, I wasn't aware of this. Dr. Brenner passed in April of 2019.
And he was? He's
a world-renowned physicist. I don't even know. I had to look him up and Google him because I'd never heard of him. And Anthony said to me, you're going to be working with Dr. Brenner. He's a world-renowned physicist, and we're going to be bringing in information about manipulating DNA. And I was like, "You're crazy. Like, are you nuts? Like, how am I gonna? I don't even know anything about, physics, So it's amazing what comes through. And then, like I said, I Googled this man, and up popped this world-renowned physicist, Dr. Brenner. And so Anthony, the next book, I believe, is going to be about what Anthony's doing, but also this DNA process, putting the power back in the people's hands.
Right. Well, and how much does the book cover on that? I mean, that's just in the book. I did see something like that in the book about the DNA and that gentleman's name. But yeah, so you cover information that's in there about some of the work that you're going to be doing, or you feel that you're going to be doing. That's incredible, and that you Googled him and that you didn't even know the name before. Wow. Okay.
And I just don't go in blindly. Anthony tells me things, and I still say, like when he said you're going to be writing a book, and I'm like, I'm not right. You're crazy. I don't even know the first thing about writing a book. I don't even know how to find a publisher, but he guided me everywhere, and he brought me to the publisher, and I emailed her, and I said, this is my situation. I'm writing a book. This is a chapter. And she said, let me get you an editor. And I talked to the editor, and he says, it doesn't work like this. So I was blown away because I have never had an experience like this, So he's guiding everything. He's giving me to the people that I need. He brings me where I need to go. And as long as I follow what he's telling me, a whole new expansive world opens up before my eyes.
When you give a reading to a client, if, Anthony comes through, do you find that you're, learning from that reading as well, that the readings that you do, you're also gaining more insight?
Yes, and usually, it depends on what the client is ready to hear, the information that spirit will share with them. The spirit world is never going to put their loved one at risk for hearing or understanding anything that will put them in detriment, if that makes sense, if they're not ready to hear. Obviously, if they come to me, they're ready to understand that their loved one is there, and they're starting to seek that information out, whereas before maybe they didn't understand that. So spirit is very discerning when it comes in what it will bring to a person. The higher self is also involved. I speak to a lot of my clients' higher selves. Are you able to process this information? Will it be of detriment to you if you hear this? And spirit never wants you to be of detriment. So no. And I'm learning immense lessons. I've seen where he is, trains and schools and buildings that I have not seen before. And so this reality that he's in right now, and how I talk about in the book, how he's shifted and grown through the spirit world. There's always different levels to the spirit world. In the short time that he's been there, he's shifted and changed and evolved greatly. So when he would originally come in, he'd be like a white color. He's white and gold now. He's up-leveled. His energy is expansive. He's learned to manipulate energy better. So he's learning how to play with energy more. So he could come in and knock me on my bed, or move things.
Right. And what is the most important message of the book, would you say?
I believe that we are all one. When we can learn to look at that, we are all one. There would never be any anger or hatred or crime or, what I mean, or fear. When you look at another person and you see them for what they are, at their heart space, how could you hate that person? So we are all one. And when we begin to understand that we are all one, we will come together on a different level.
That's beautiful. And how can people get in contact with yourself? Because I don't think you have a website, but you are on Facebook and some other social media platforms.
I'm on Facebook and Instagram under Sassy Soul Advice, and I'm on Sedona Soul Sisters, www.sedonasoulsisters.com, and that's where my business is based, with my Sedona Soul Sisters, so you can find me there. But I'm all over.
Okay, well, we're linking that on the screen as well, and all that's going to be in the description, along with your book in the description as well. I'm sure we will cross paths at some point. I just want to say, Terri-Ann Russell, just thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me and sharing Anthony's voice.